G'day guys, this is Nick at Stridewise.com and I'm in Utah, Salt Lake City, Utah with the marvelous, inimitable, very clever Weston from Rose Anvil.
Yep.
How's it going, man?
Good.
Thank you for hosting me in your studio.
Good having you here.
Yeah, he's huge by the way. He's 6'4". 6'4"?
Yep.
He's an enormous man. Today, I thought I would get Weston's help talking about Mink Oil, which is hugely kind of popular but also kind of controversial product for conditioning leather boots. We're going to talk about how to use it, what it does, why it stands out in the industry, and we're also going to apply a couple of different products to these two different halves of cut up, what are these ones? Thursday mock toe boots. You can see if it darkens and how it affects the performance of the leather. So let's get started. Weston, what is Mink Oil?
I don't know as much about it as you do, but I do know for sure it's rendered from the animal minks. And mink,
yeah,
minks.
Mink. A mink is it's a member of the same family as otters and ferrets, and it's quite aquatic, like a otter, and not so much like a ferret. And something about the fact that they like spend a lot of time in the water or whatever, it makes them quite oily and quite fatty. And the oil comes from the rendered fat from pelts destined for the mink fur industry. And it was like around the I think it was the 1920s or 30s when like fox fur became a bit less popular and minks became more popular for coats. So there were all these mink skins kind of hanging around, and they thought the ethical thing to do would be to pull some oil from it and see how it performs. And what's interesting about mink oil is that unlike most animal fats, it is very high in unsaturated fat. So it's 75% unsaturated fat. And unlike unsaturated fats like vegetable oils, it's more stable than them.
Because that's always people's concern with adding any sort of oil. Is it going to rot my leather over time? So that's a huge part of why people love mink oil is even having this sit in the shelf for 5 years, as long as it's not hot, it's gonna be fine. And if you put this on your boots, let them sit for a couple years, usually it's gonna be fine. Versus like if you put some of the other oils people put on that we don't recommend, like coconut oil, you can rot, it'll rot in your cupboard, it'll rot on your boots if you're not careful with it.
Well, actually, hang on, what does mink oil do, first of all?
So the main reason people will use mink oil, especially like I learned about mink oil when I first started firefighting, when I actually got work boots that we were wildland firefighting. Being in ash and heat all day, it dries out the leather. So mink oil was the conditioner of choice to resaturate that leather, prevent it from drying out and cracking. So it just adds that moisture that gives you the longevity of leather.
Yeah, so it helps to, so it moisturizes the leather, then it's not gonna be cracking and wrinkling and so much as it gets older. So the mink oil, it moisturizes it. Does mink oil waterproof boots?
I think it does to some extent, but not nearly as well as actual waterproofing conditioners. Because the oil is somewhat water resistant, you're going to have some water resistance, but it's not gonna be so much that it's gonna be waterproof.
Yeah, so the reason mink oil, or a big reason why mink oil is pretty good at waterproofing, or improving water resistance rather. We usually say waterproofing. What we really mean is water resistance. It's not gonna be technically waterproof unless you have like a different method of soling it. So it's a whole other thing, some Gore-Tex in there or whatever. But it's good because because water and oil, they're kind of opposites, right? Like one's polar and one is not polar. And so if you have like a fatty chicken noodle soup, you'll have like some oil floating on the top. The two don't like each other, right? So the mink oil is oil, it's very, very fatty, water is not. And so they actually repel from one another. What's interesting relative to other waterproofing agents is that there are a lot of waterproofing agents, like silicone gets a bad rap from some people. This is all very controversial, but silicone gets a bad rap because it creates a water resistant barrier on the top of the leather. But in doing so, from like separating the leather from the outside world, it can actually reduce the longevity of the leather, like make it like sort of dry out, or more prone to drying out and everything, right? Silicone will waterproof your boots, but it should be an absolute last resort because it's not amazing for the leather. Whereas mink oil, it penetrates very deeply into the pores of the leather, and it still has that water resistant barrier over the top of it, but it doesn't dry it out so much in the process of increasing the water resistance. Do I have that right?
Yeah, and the other thing about leather, it's a unique material compared to most man-made materials, where it's got that natural fiber structure throughout the entirety of the piece of leather. So you're not just saturating those pores, but you're actually getting those fibers loosened up and lubricated, so that as you're bending the toe of your boot, those fibers aren't dry, rubbing against each other and starting to crack. They're a little bit lubricated to where they're gonna flow a little bit softer and not break nearly as fast. So
Yeah.
that's a big part of the reason why it adds the longevity to the boots.
Yeah, the vast majority of the time when you look for a mink oil product, especially mink oil for boots and leather, is that it'll say, like here, mink oil liquid. This is Fiebing's or Kiwi's mink oil, but they're not all mink oil, right? So the most popular mink oil on Amazon, if I'm not mistaken, is Soft Soles, which I've done like a video on before on my channel. It's called Soft Soles mink oil, and they say it contains mink oil. And the thing with the condition is that they never tell you the exact amount of their ingredients or exactly what the ingredients are. And I eventually found out after a lot of digging that that product is 5 to 15% mink oil and 85% beef tallow. So beef fat, which probably goes rancid, right? I would
imagine, yeah.
More than mink oil anyway, right? In the same vein, mink oil from Fiebing's and from Kiwi, these both aren't all mink oil. So this is mink oil, silicone, and lanolin, and Neatsfoot oil. And this one, does it say? A rich blend of mink oil, silicone, and lanolin.
Okay.
Without the Neatsfoot oil, right? So that can have some benefits. Lanolin, if lanolin is in this, it's probably from sheep's wool, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
And lanolin helps to increase water resistance as well. So if you want mink oil to improve the water resistance of your boots, probably not a bad idea to have lanolin in there. But there's also silicone in both of these, which some people hate in their boots. Right. But if it's combined with mink oil, maybe it's not such a big deal. I don't know. What do you think? Is pure mink oil better?
I don't know. It's hard to say exactly what's best, because how do you compare things in a real scientific way when it comes to boots?
Yeah.
To me, Fiebing's is a pretty reputable company. They make probably some of the most popular saddle soaps and conditioners. So if they're putting it in there, I doubt it's harmful. So I think a part of the reason why they add other compounds in these is some of the benefits from those individual silicone and the lanolin, but also to cut down on the price of the mink oil because it's not pure mink oil.
Yeah, that's true. We did manage to get some pure mink oil though. This is Saphir's mink oil. So this one's 100% mink oil. What we decided to do here, we're going to apply the mink oil to these boots, and we're going to put the pure mink oil on this half, the right half of this light colored Thursday leather. And then we're gonna put, I don't know, what do you reckon, Fiebing's?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna put Fiebing's on this other one, and we're gonna have a look at how it changes the color differently, and maybe how the water resistance performs. Although we probably won't have a great idea of the water resistance and stuff until it's been on for a few days. But we're gonna see what we can do tonight. So let's put it on.
Cool. Yeah, I guess this liquid mink oil is usually used less for the look and more for the actual conditioning, and maybe that paste is more for more delicately applying it, because this stuff just goes straight in as far as it can into the leather.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
It's like when I'm breaking in boots for hunting or hiking, and I'm wanting to really not have the pain of going through breaking in this hard leather, I'll just slather it in mink oil, and it just makes it buttery soft within a couple miles of wearing it.
All right, so it has been, I don't know, an hour or so since we've put on the products. It is worth noting that the mink oil is more of a paste, this one, whereas the mink oil composite, you might call it, that Weston put on is more of a liquid. So that is probably largely responsible for the fact that Weston's boot, or Weston's half boot, is lighter in color because it has penetrated more deeply.
Right.
Whereas this one is a paste, so it's a bit more on the surface. So what do you think that means for water resistance?
Just naturally, the fact that it's on the surface and you've got more mink oil on the top here versus this is already almost, in some spots, got back to the original color.
Yeah.
It's going to be more water resistant for now.
Yeah. And as you can see with this footage, we actually have been playing around with putting some water on these boots, and the boot that I put the pure mink oil paste on, while it's darker, it's significantly more water resistant, or hydrophobic, I would say, because it really is beating off really, really nicely. Whereas on the mink oil composite, the water is sort of soaking in a bit more. But it is true. Now you might be saying, okay, maybe that's because this is pure mink oil, or maybe it's because this is more of a paste. So what we're going to do now, because we're very dedicated to making an amazing mink oil video, we're going to grab this mink oil paste, and we're going to put a little bit of mink oil paste on the boot that got the liquid treatment to see how it's going to affect the water resistance now.
This is not pure mink oil.
This is almost the same. The only difference is that this has some Neatsfoot oil, yes. So this one here is more of a paste, but it's still mink oil, silicone, and lanolin, just like the liquid. The only difference is the liquid has a bit of Neatsfoot oil, which is a bit more geared toward conditioning and water resistance anyway. All right, so I'll just put a bit of paste on it. We are back after a third application of mink oil. As you can see, it is now very water resistant. It's more water resistant than it was before when it was just the liquid mink oil composite. However, the color is different. Why do you think that is, Weston?
I think with those other compounds in it, the lanolin and silicone, I think that prevents the mink oil from absorbing into the leather as fully as the pure mink oil. So it's sitting on top like both pastes do, but it's not absorbing quite as deep into it. So I think that's why it's not as dark, and I think that's part of the reason why you get some of that beading on top, no matter if it's a paste or if it's the liquid kind, because it's not absorbing it nearly as much.
Right. So the pure mink oil, it goes deeply into the pores of the leather, so it conditions as it improves water resistance. However, because it goes so deep into the pores, it darkens the color more. If you use more of a composite one, particularly ones with lanolin and silicone, which most do, honestly, like Red Wings Mink Oil also has I'm pretty sure lanolin and silicone. It definitely has lanolin in it. If you use something like that, it won't darken the boots to the same extent, which a lot of people are going to like. However, it doesn't condition the boots to the same extent either. So there are pros and cons to both of them, to pure mink oil or to composite mink oil. So these are two ways your boots can turn out if you get a mink oil product.
Yeah, I would say the last thing, before you put any conditioner on any boot, just find a spot on the boot that you don't care about the color changing as much, and just try a little bit of the conditioner and see what it does to the leather. Because you might not like the way it darkens it, or the way it takes away the sheen, or it adds the sheen. You know, it's better to try it on a small spot first, and then commit to it, knowing what it's going to do to your leather.
Yeah. So that's just about everything we had to say on mink oil. I did also want to mention some mink oil alternatives because people have ethical concerns about mink oil a lot of the time, and like, for me, and maybe to you, it might sound kind of silly that you're wearing a dead animal anyway, so why would you object to mink oil? But mink farming has been outlawed in much of Europe, and I'm pretty sure in the entire US as well. So a lot of it comes from China, and there are widespread reports of animal welfare issues and that sort of thing, which is totally fair. So if mink oil makes you feel a bit weird, you don't want to use Saphir's Renovator. That's a very, very popular conditioner, but it also contains mink oil. You might want to use something like Neatsfoot Oil, which is a pretty common. It's a common substitute. Neatsfoot oil is made from the rendered shin and feet bones of cattle, and it behaves a bit differently to mink oil. How would you compare it?
I feel like it actually behaves pretty similarly, doesn't it? At least from like what I've seen, it soaks into leather, it darkens your leather, and it conditions it to some degree. What do you mean by different? Takes off here.
From what I understand that Neatsfoot oil, it doesn't darken the leather quite as much. It doesn't go quite as deeply into leather as mink oil. Am I totally wrong in that?
To me, I've never done a side-by-side comparison, but to me, mink oil and Neatsfoot oil are. You can switch them and they basically do the same thing.
You think Neatsfoot's as good for water resistance?
I don't know about water resistance, but as much as it absorbs into the leather and it darkens it, but I've never done a side-by-side comparison.
All right. Neatsfoot oil?
Derail your...
No, it's good. Okay, so there's Neatsfoot oil, kind of similar. Bickmore's Bick 4 is another one. Now that one is definitely... Bickmore's Bick 4 is a conditioner and it's not as amazing at water resistance, but it's the perfect thing to get for your boots if you want to condition the leather, but you don't want to darken the color. So if your priority is maintaining the color, and that's definitely like an understandable thing, maybe it's superficial or whatever, but for plenty of leathers, I'm thinking about Red Wings Briar Oil Slick as an example. It's like brown, but it's quite red, but if it changed at all, you'd lose the redness, which is really cool. Neatsfoot oil is good for that. So that's another alternative to use. And then there's Obenauf's, which I mentioned earlier, and that's one, it's not vegan because I'm pretty sure it has beeswax in it. Okay. But there's no dead animal in it, exactly. Except for probably bits of bees.
Okay, I didn't know beeswax wasn't vegan. I always thought beeswax was vegan.
No.
Learned something new.
No, it's like eggs and milk, it's a byproduct. Honey. Not vegan. So Obenauf's is one, but Obenauf's is very good at improving water resistance, but it darkens even more than this. So we've got our spectrum there, right?
Yeah.
If you're really into water resistance and you don't want to use mink oil, Obenauf's will do a decent job of that. It'll darken it more. And then you got Neatsfoot Oil, I guess maybe in the middle there, and then all the way down the other end you got Bick Bick 4 if your priority is conditioning and not waterproofing.
Okay.
And there it is. That's our guide to mink oil. Subscribe to this, and I really want to thank Weston for coming. Anything else you want to say, Weston?
I think that pretty much covers it.
Cool. All right. There's a whole article in the description below, by the way, if you want to check that out. And make absolutely certain you subscribe to Weston's channel called Rose Anvil, because it's really entertaining and a lot more popular and more fun than mine.
It's semi-informative. It's
yeah.
mostly entertaining.
Yeah, but you know, he's a good-looking guy, so in any case. Okay. All right. Thanks for watching.